Sa pagpatak ng ulan, sa pagsubok na dumaraan, may tapang kang harap, lilipad kang may pangarap. Lilipad kang may pangarap.
Kailan may di mag-iisa, susulong ka ng may kasama, may tapang kang haharap.
Lilipad kang may pangarap. Lilipad kang may pangarap. Simula na ng bukas. Simula na ng bukas. Simula na ng bukas.
Sabay sa pagbabago,
Harapin ang bagong mundo. Simula na ng bukas. Simula na ng bukas ngayon.
What if one day you wake up and you have a child? What if your child grows up to be curious? What if he gets adventurous? What if he's a risk taker? What if you are no longer around? Make sure you keep your family protected with Basic Cover Plus. Get up to 2 times your insurance benefits, your premium back, and more. All guaranteed.
Your customers have bills to pay, essentials to buy, and services to hire. Make it secure, reliable, and hassle-free for them with PayMaya. PayMaya's payment solutions have you covered because now you can accept all kinds of cashless payments any way you do business, whether it's in-store, delivery, via mobile app, on your website, or even without a website. Plus, you can monitor your business growth on a single dashboard. You're busy growing your business and serving your customers. Get empowered with payment solutions from PayMaya.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second segment of BusinessWorld Insights 3-part series on Fintech for a financially inclusive and resilient economy. I am Bea Laforga, multimedia reporter at BusinessWorld, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar on Fintech's role in empowering businesses of all sizes. We invited 4 guests today to explain how local companies, big and small, can take advantage of financial technology to boost their operations and become more competitive. With the various benefits it gives, fintech solutions have a huge potential to help businesses from big ones to the more populous MSMEs. This has been observed in neighboring countries like Singapore, Indonesia, and China as they promoted digital payment and lending solutions. As much as it has facilitated the recovery of businesses in other markets, fintech can be of big help to businesses here in the Philippines as well, especially as we enter the new normal. From as simple as e-payment channels to something as complex as blockchain solutions, fintech is beginning to serve as the new partner that businesses can rely on. Just recently, the international credit rating agency Moody's Investor Service acknowledged the potential of fintech tech companies in the Philippines to beat traditional banks' dominance in key areas, especially in retail services like remittances and lending. Moody's cited how the soaring popularity of mobile wallets was able to capture unbanked Filipinos and ultimately widen financial inclusion in the country. To explore on the topic further, it is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, Mr. Robertson Dick Chang, an IT and fintech entrepreneur who founded the online payment solution DragonPay and is currently the company's Chief Operating Officer and Chief Technology Officer. Based in Manila, He is currently on a mission to make e-commerce payments as accessible to as many people as possible in a country where there is low credit card usage and banking penetration. DragonPay, established in 2010, is the local leader in alternative payments, supporting various channels like cash payments, online banking, ATM, mobile payments, and international remittance. Mr. Chang, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for the introduction, Bea. Allow me to share my slides just to give a little bit of context to the current situation. So good morning again, everyone. My name is Dick, and I'm the founder of DragonPay. We're an 11-year-old quote-unquote startup. We have been in the fintech industry since the start, and we have pioneered what we refer to as alternative payments. So basically, our mission is to allow people with no credit cards to shop online, go into e-commerce by paying through various means ranging from online banking, cash payments, mobile payments, e-wallets, and so on. So I just wanted to share our transactions for the past 5 years. So as you can see, from 2017, 2018, 2019, we were growing normally as any normal business, I guess. But as you can see, 2020 was really a remarkable year, and this was primarily due to the pandemic. And as you can see, our transaction almost tripled during this period, which is a reflection really of the shift of people changing their habits from going to retail, physical retail, to going online. And the trend seems to be continuing. The last bar shows you the first half of 2021. So assuming the second half of the year will be about the same as the first half, then we're looking at almost double again of our transaction count in 2020. So there is really a continuing trend of going digital. And just wanted to share quickly the distribution of the payments that we have been seeing. So back 2 years ago, 2019, e-wallets accounted only for about 21%. And as you would guess, cash was king, accounting for almost 70% of the total volume. So this has greatly shifted in 2020 with the pandemic. People stopped going outside and making cash payments, and people started using e-wallets. So we see that there was a significant change from 21%. It jumped to 64% for e-wallet, and the trend is continuing. So for the first half of 2021, we're already seeing 71% of payments through our system coming in through the various e-wallets like GCash, PayMaya, Coins.ph, and so on. So those are the only slides that I wanted to share, and I'll send it back to you, Bea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chang, for an insightful presentation on how the pandemic shaped payment system here in the Philippines. To explore further on the topic, up next is Mr. Shailan Jasani, who is the principal consultant and head of the fintech team at the research and consulting firm Frost and Sullivan. He has more than 20 years of consulting and research experience across multiple industries. His consulting expertise includes advising financial services, companies, and technology vendors on market entry and expansion strategy, product service portfolio, and delivering competitive intelligence to board members. Mr. Sani, please take the lead. Oh.
My apologies. Hi, thanks a lot for the introduction. And good morning, everyone. It is indeed a privilege to have this opportunity to share what Frost and Sullivan thinks about Philippines fintechs, and it is certainly our efforts to help help all you businesses to make full use of the fintech. So what we actually do research around globe, and we have done several research around just covering Southeast Asian countries, and there are a few things that stand out, particularly for Philippines, right? And I will keep quoting how Philippines compares to your peers, right? And when I look at how important SMEs or micro, small, medium SMEs are for you, right? And it certainly looks at you are the bulk of total registered business, right? So you are 99% 99.5% of the total registered business, and you give employment to some 63% of the total population, right? So you are very, very important. You are almost second to Indonesia, where in 99.9% of the SMEs are of the total register, right? Now, bringing that to context and why it is really important is your central bank, BSP, understands this, right? And they had actually mandated main league banks to give financing to SMEs, right? And the mandated law was that 10% in 2008 and followed by 8% in 2018, these banks will be required to allocate loans to SME. Did that happen? It started to happen somewhere in 2019 when 9.5% of these banks were loaning to SMEs. But as 2018 approached, in 2000, H1 2018, only 3.2% of these main league banks actually were loaning to SMEs, right? So there was this fall in the overall loans, and there's a big gap. So yes, SMEs are important, but the loans are not going to them, right? And loans are a very key component, if you would, for the success of the growth of SMEs, right? And then obviously then what is government doing, right? So the government is really playing crucial role. They have put in place all the policies, and of lately we see more and more efforts, right? Like the digital payment transformation roadmap that they have put in place, and they would want 50% of retail transaction to move to digital platform. Now, because of COVID-19, I think it is going closer to that. There is some 71, 72%, 71%, which are unbanked. So that is also being translating. And we will later discuss what is happening and how things are transforming, right? But they would want 70% of the Filipinos to be on board using transaction account. That's a big task, but growing the popularity of digital wallets and I hope peer-to-peer payments will also start to kick in. This certainly seems like a possibility, right? And there's several initiatives being rolled out by your central bank, including the initiatives on payments, so InstaPay, PesoNet, their RGTS, real gross settlements like PhilPass is there, and they're putting in place digital IDs, and they are trying to get a credit risk database going. So lots of good thing happening. Uh, Unfortunately, this is all happening more towards the 2020. So you will start to see the gap being closed, but it will take a bit of time, right? Now, if I look at how has peer-to-peer industries, right? So it's an industry where a normal retailer like you and me can invest, and SMEs can actually make full use of it. Now, it is as compared to your peer countries, it has some catching up to do, but you have started well. So you have started to cover, and you are giving loans to consumers and students, and you are giving loans for medical, right? There's the big differentiation for Philippines is that you give advance salary loans, right? And this is more unique to Philippines than any of your neighbors, right? So that's a very good start. You are unfortunately among the ones with the highest interest rate range. But the fortunate part is that the loan tenures actually start at 15 days, and it can go as high as 36 months, right? So there's all good and bad part of it. Uh, as I said, now if I had to quickly compare you with the other Southeast Asian banks in terms of how much time does it take for the bank to lend to you, right? Or even the peer-to-peer lending companies to lend to you. Uh, just in a context, the funding society in Singapore will take less than 24 hours to give you a loan. Whereas best of your company is called First Circle, maybe, it will take at least few days, right? Last when we recorded, which is somewhere around end of 2019, it would take 5 days. So yes, there's substantial gap in that, and there's something that you definitely have to uh, do a catching. So those are few quick comments. Great initiatives being rolled out, but you guys have to do a quick catching, and I think fintech companies will definitely enable that to happen. Back to you, Bella.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sani, for enlightening us on how credit is crucial for MSMEs to grow their businesses and how important it is to close the lending gap in the Philippines. Moving on to our third panelist is Mr. Frederick Levi of GCash. He is the Chief Commercial Officer for Transfers. He oversees all GCash business units related to peer-to-peer payments, cash-in and cash-out transactions, fund transfers, know your customer processes and optimizations, as well as in handling relationships with banks, other financial institutions, and the operations at the mobile wallet's enterprise arm, GCash for Business, to name a few. He developed and implemented several of the business solutions and strategies which have led GCash to become the leading electronic wallet. Now let's all hear from Mr. Levi. Sir?
Thank you, Bea. Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Business World, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I only have one slide, but I think it's a complete slide with a lot of information. So today, GCash is the number one overall mobile wallet in the country, with more than 44 million users, which represent roughly 40% of the Filipino. So that means 40% of the Filipino today have a GCash account. And I think we're getting closer and closer to what's the motto, what's the vision of GCash, which is finance for all. The interesting part, I think, of GCash is the idea that we are clearly opening door to a full ecosystem of product, as you can see. So all product related to transfer of money from point A to point B, but payment, whether it's offline, online. We have a massive batch of financial services, whether it's credit, saving, investment, insurance, and more actually are going to happen very soon. Some related to installments, some related to merchant loans, some related even to stock market proposition before the end of the year. So a lot of stuff are still on the pipe. Recently, we also developed more and more lifestyle products, including GLife, which is basically our access for merchant to a GCash customer or overall ecosystem. Everything happens inside the GCash world, so you don't leave the app and you can buy from your preferred brands. There is already 100 merchants roughly, and we are targeting 250 to 300 before the end of the year with extremely promising results already. That being said, I think the interesting thing, going back to what was said earlier by my other panelists, there is clearly an appetite for Filipino now to jump into digitalization of any form of financial aspect. Today, just to give you a couple of figures, through App Annie, which is a third party relatively established everywhere in the world, if you take out Facebook and Instagram in terms of app, GCash is actually the third app in the country after Lazada and Shopee, but in front of Netflix or of Spotify or whatever. So it gives an idea how now GCash is embedded in the daily life of everyone. One of the figures also that we will probably talk about later on in the panel, we have now 2.5 million merchants and social sellers who are actually transacting using GCash. That's pretty massive. And that's directly reflected in the volume of funds that actually pass through the system. So our GTV, which is the gross transaction value, to make it simple, is the amount of cash which is passing through the system, whatever is the form of transactions. Last year, we actually reached more than 1 trillion peso, which was already more than the 3 previous years consolidated. This year, we will do significantly more than 2 trillion peso. So that really gives an idea on how the things now are getting faster and faster. And Filipinos start also to have a very clear picture, step by step, on what could be the advantage of this new type of financial journeys. One of the figures you can see on the slide, 1 Filipino by 3, actually on our base, have a financial service attached to him, whether it's credit, saving, investment, insurance, or whatsoever. So That's very interesting because historically speaking, this is the type of services that people used to attach to wealth. Basically, I cannot have access to this kind of services. It's not for me. I don't have the means, I don't have the money to have access to it. And that's really some of the things we pushed aggressively. We wanted to build products simple to enter for any Filipino, affordable, and with a very clear benefit at any given point. With that figure, 1 by 3, I think it's on the right track. So definitely, that's something we are kind of proud of. It's going in the right direction. Overall, the pandemic will probably be mentioned during this conversation. Clearly, we see some face records setting growth massive in terms of key business indicator. Or figure really go up to the roof. But the most important thing is definitely this is just a reflection that at some point during these hard times for everyone, GCash has been able to help people, particularly the ones who were looking for a livelihood in these tough times. And I think that's the most important aspect. The figure as just the result, the consequences of that. More and more, we are actually getting closer to the finance for all vision of GCash.
Thank you, Sir Frederick, for giving us a glimpse on how GCash saw the rise in digital payments, especially last year. So moving on to our last speaker before the open forum later is PayMaya's Chief Product Officer Mitch Padua, who has more than 20 years of experience in the tech industry. He joined the Smart Communications in 2010 to build digital products for the PLDT Group. In Smart, he co-invented the Safe Browse patent that led to multiple international awards. He was one of the founding executives that led the spin-off of Voyager Innovations in 2013, with its mission to power the digital economy in growth markets, especially through its products in advertising, e-commerce, payments, and financial services. Mr. Mitch Padua, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Bea. Thank you, Business World, for having us here. So good morning, everyone. Definitely excited to see old friends Fred and Dick here, and nice to meet you, Shalendra. To our audience, I hope you guys are all safe and doing well. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has had far-reaching effects on every aspect of our lives. Underserved communities have been hit the hardest, and we all need to do our part to ensure an inclusive recovery. So at PayMaya, our top priority from the beginning has been the health and well-being of our employees, and we work quickly to transition 100% of our workforce to work remotely in a safe and effective manner since day one. For consumers, we provided relief from the pressures of the pandemic by working with the government to distribute much-needed ayuda through the Bayanihan We Heal as One program. Working with NGOs and charitable institutions, we help distribute much-needed financial aid to our community. Prior to the outbreak, it was clear that Fintech would play a pivotal role in financial services. Going forward, COVID-19 has undoubtedly accelerated that process. It has accelerated the global movement towards digital payments, unleashing a digital wave of change across almost all industries, advancing digital transformation by at least 3 to 5 years. The shift away from cash, already well underway before the pandemic began, has become even more apparent. This transition opens new opportunities to upgrade the current financial system to one that is fundamentally more affordable, efficient, and inclusive. So we in PayMaya are positioned to bring digital-first, frictionless, ubiquitous, and secure financial services to all segments of the population. So the PayMaya's end-to-end platform powers both sides of the transaction, enterprises of all sizes and consumers. We are very deliberate to provide solutions to help people and enterprises to accept all types of payment, be it credit cards, debit cards, foreign e-wallets such as Alipay or WeChat, local wallets, or banks with the support of QRPH. We also help our partners to move money, both domestically through our 40,000 on-ground agent network and internationally with our partners. We provide an all-in-one seamless experience for enterprises, facilitating simple, secure payments, whether online or offline, for enterprises while helping these enterprises identify fraud and improve on risk management. We're extending beyond payments as we invest in the business success of our enterprise partners. We have deep knowledge about our partners, so we can now offer integrated credit solutions as an enabler to our MSMEs, and we have started that as well this year. So given our scale, we are able to support enterprises of all sizes across industries to provide a frictionless experience for their consumers wherever they are 24 by 7. Merchants will have to respond to the new or now normal, and PayMaya is here to enable that. Here are some trends that I'm sure we all see, right? One is really digital first. Digital will be the primary method of engagement, and it has changed the way people live, work, play, and pay. Omni-channel. Engagement will shift to everywhere. Your online storefront, a marketplace, Viber Messenger, social media, or your physical storefronts. There will be a multitude of ways to meet the consumer. Tailored efforts having universal checkout and payment solutions will enable merchants to tap into the demand of these new channels. PayMaya has hosted checkout pages, payment gateway APIs for merchants to customize their payment pages. Physical mobile Android terminals that can accept payments face to face, anywhere, all with one business dashboard. We also see that home delivery and in-store pickup is something that is now, a norm, and the retail landscape adopting quickly to it. So this is actually makes it easier with cashless on delivery with the help of our PayMaya One Android terminals. The ability to accept all payments and the need for digital wallets. So online or face-to-face, again, you will need to accept anything, right? Whether it's credit cards, debit cards, Visa, MasterCard, JCB, Amex, Chinese wallets or the local wallets like GCash, GrabPay, and the like. All of that needs to be accepted by a merchant. So today, PayMaya provides all of that as a single enterprise solution. So in the end, the PayMaya business platform will enable merchants of all sizes to embrace a digital-first strategy. For MSME customers, they are very essential to our local community. It is imperative that they not only survive the transition to the digital economy, but thrive in it. We cannot and we will not leave them behind. So PayMaya aims to serve as a strategic partner to our merchants to help enable them to adapt to this new context and to contribute to the development of a more inclusive economy for our customers and communities. Back to you, Bea.
Thank you, Sir Mitch, for sharing your insights on how PayMaya helps small businesses, especially under the pandemic last year. So after getting a clear overview of the growing fintech industry in the country, we will now go to the panel discussion to understand further how these solutions can help businesses thrive. We prepared several questions that any of our speakers could answer. And if time permits, we can also entertain a few questions from our viewers on Facebook. So to start, here's our first question. And I'd like to ask our speakers, what are the most significant benefits businesses of various sizes can get from fintech, and what are they missing out from hesitating to integrate fintech in their businesses?
Well,
Hello, Sir Johnny.
Danny, I will let you, Dick, I will let you go first.
Okay.
Well, I think the benefits are quite obvious, and it's really to allow businesses of all sizes to go online and compete, right? So unlike in the traditional physical world, wherein the big players can afford to, get really large mall spaces and spend a lot on the physical look and feel of the retail stores, and the micro and small MSMEs may not be in a position to do so. Uh, I think going online is a big equalizer because you cannot really distinguish between a small seller and a big seller just based on their website, right? So the small guy can make their website look as big, or if not even bigger, than the incumbent big player. So it's really the big equalizer.
Yeah, I agree with Dick there. It's really going online gives you access to customers that you may have never had being physical. So the reach any time of the day are also open. So basically, being digital gives you access to all of the people nationwide. It's also very convenient for customers. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's safe for your employees and your customers as well. Increases business efficiency. using digital payment solutions improve your overall, I guess, business operations, even your reconciliation, gives you better insights again about your customers as well and about your business. And then obviously, it legitimizes your business, right? If you're able to accept all types of payments, it makes you, you know, be a sort of real uh, enterprise or company.
Yeah, I think Bea, the question could be on the other side. Why only sticking to cash? I mean, because it's not only limited to online, it's also offline payment, right? It's any form of payment. Um, Beside, the figures are there, meaning it's not like people are trying it because they feel forced or whatsoever. Or no, I was reading a study recently by Temasek, who was saying that 95% of the digital Filipino consumer will continue to use at least one digital service post-COVID. So that's the trend of the consumer. The consumer now is going in that direction. So um, I think it's getting more and more obvious for any form of businesses, including the small one up to the big organized one, that they need actually to have this form of payment proposed to the consumer. And overall, also the benefit for the consumer, as Dick and Mitch was uh, explaining earlier, it's so smooth, it's extremely efficient, it's very quick to onboard versus previous system. Basically, in a couple of day, if not sometimes hour, you are able to accept a digital form of payment. And I insist, not only online, but including offline. So the question is more, why not? What's the reason that would push you not to jump into this fintech move if you are a small and business enterprise?
Oh, thanks, Frederick. So if I had to add there, right, obviously there's been, less and less number of, there's so much of an unbanked population, and uh, all these payment and mobile wallets are helping that cause. But if you see, first entry point is how do I bring these people from being offline to online, right? And there's a lot of work being done. Once you get them online, how do you make them, how do you enable them financially, right? And one of the biggest enabler is you giving them ability to accept digital payments. The second biggest enabler, from my point of view, is how do I give them loan when they need it? And it doesn't have to be a big loan. It could be a very small loan for 7 days or 15 days or 20 days, right? So working capital loans. Now, I think that's going to be a big enabler. Uh, Philippines is working on this right now, which is primarily driven through peer-to-peer payment. Right? It has in fact penetrated good enough in urban cities, and it is starting to penetrate in rural areas. Right? So it is big enabler. I think one of the studies by Investry company in Indonesia showed that how getting loan at the right time can propel the growth in SMEs, right? So I think that study said somewhere around 2.5 times of growth in 5 to 7 years, right? So that's how significant it is, right? And it is, I think the biggest barrier right now is having the right network and reaching out to the right set of people with the right technology. And as that starts to happen, I think SMEs will embrace, right? And uh, I think a few studies that we saw, once technology is there, once SMBs know how to use the technology, they embrace it much faster than the large organizations, because they just don't have to worry about the bureaucracies that large organizations have, right? So yeah, back to you, Bella.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your insights on this. And I agree on how fintech gave small businesses the chance to be more competitive. But since you mentioned that as MSMEs are ready to embrace these new fintech solutions, uh, what's your advice for businesses in considering in choosing a fintech solution for their businesses, and how can they determine if the solution fits their certain needs?
Yeah, so let me start with that. I guess for MSMEs or enterprises in general, really looking for the widest reach in terms of different payment types, right? So it's very hard to second guess what the consumer will have, whether it's a debit card, a wallet, a Chinese wallet, or a credit card. So you're looking for a partner that can actually provide all types of payment, whether it's online or offline. So sometimes your business can have a mix of both, and it's very hard to actually reconcile if you have different terminals, if you have different payment gateways, you have different partners for each type of payment. So I think that's one thing to look at. The other thing is really competitive rates. At the end of the day, each partner or each payment solution will have different rates, right? And someone that can actually help you blend all of those partner payment types into one simple rate for you will actually make your life a little bit more easier. So I think that's something that MSME should look out for. One solution for online, offline that covers all types of different payments here in the Philippines.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Anyone would like to add to that?
If
If
you're talking, Bea, from an MSME perspective, simplicity and onboarding clearly is a critical component, because you will look for a provider who can propose you an all-in-one solution, but also adapt it to your business. MSME merchant, for example, are not necessarily the one who's going to have the more card, particularly credit card transaction. It will be probably more digital transaction these days, or offline, or whatever. But also the size of the market you can reach is important. So at some point, we see also more and more that GCash is becoming a form of standard. Again, when you start to be 40 to 42% of the total Filipino population, it's becoming complicated not to propose that kind of solution at some point. So from an MSME perspective, you are also looking for reaching the widest market as possible. I think it's one of the reason why we see this massive growth, particularly on the small enterprise, the social seller, as I was mentioning earlier. 2.5 million people now using GCash for a transaction. That's pretty big now, actually, when you think about it. So my advice would be to make sure that you are going after the payment solution that makes sense for your business, and also going for the widest audience possible, to reach the maximum number of consumer you can.
Okay, sir, got this. And to further uh, explore that topic, based on your experience, are small businesses more hesitant in exploring fintech? Do you think a business really has to be big to avail of the more complex fintech solutions such as blockchain technology, or are they starting to have a grasp on this high end technology?
Well, I think one of the phenomenon that I have noticed in recent months is the significant growth of what we refer to as online or live selling. I guess if you look at it from like 2, 3 years ago, it used to be home TV shopping, wherein people would watch TV and somebody's doing a product demonstration. You like the product, you pick up the phone and you call. But nowadays, it's really people from all walks of life doing live selling through Facebook and other similar platforms. Um, and these are really micro sellers. So the fact that these people can go online, do e-commerce with only a webcam basically and some lighting, uh, I don't think it gets any more micro than that. And it just proves that somebody even really small can sell online and may even do better sales than the big incumbent players who are having a harder time transitioning to the new digital lifestyle.
I see. Anyone who would like to add to that?
Yeah, so I agree with what Dick is saying. Now, there are lots of technology in fintech, and I think as you go down from large to small and SMBs, what happens is SMBs don't care about the technology. It's what business problem is it solving for me? As long as it's solving, I'm fairly okay. It's the large organization that they look at when I accept a technology, how will it benefit? And what are the choices of technology I have, right? So from those perspective, I think blockchain is relatively new. Is being used more on a higher level, more on a large enterprise, somewhere on the more from bank to bank transaction, and how do I ensure that remittance are reached much faster and easier rather than that heavyweight technology being percolated to the SMBs. I don't think that is happening, and I really don't think SMBs care a lot about what technology is behind it, as long as it enables them to save money, lend money, and make payments and receive payments. I think they are fairly okay, and they generally tend to absorb these fintech technologies much faster than large organizations.
Yeah,
And
I have to agree with.
also, sorry, go Mitch. Go Mitch.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that I have to agree with what has been said. Definitely, MSMEs are actually quicker to embrace digital than larger corporations, right? They're very scrappy, and you see them using whatever tools are available to make ends meet, and that's quite good, right? In the first quarter of this year, we already saw about like 2,800% growth in the number of unique merchants, and mostly are coming from MSMEs. And what does this tell us overall, right? That these guys are actually small businesses that are seeing digital as the way forward, and they're actually making good money out of it as well. So I don't think that they're more hesitant in actually exploring fintech. In fact, they're leading the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bea, but the thing also is it's a question of maturity of the market. Right now, the appetite is really on the solution that are proposing to them, and it's very bullish. There's a lot of solution. I mean, we are releasing product every week now. And there's a very nice flow between ideation coming from the market, analyzation from the partner. Then we launch product, and in a couple of months we immediately identify a need, and boom, it's on the market. So this dynamism, this flow, this speed of execution also encourage MSME to jump in. While in the meantime, I'm not super, but maybe one of my friend in the table will correct me. I'm not aware of blockchain products very popular that are aggressively pushed to MSME in the Philippines these days. So it's not that they are not looking for it. It's I don't think there is a very strong activity on this kind of product or this kind of target these days. So as Mitch was saying, I'm a businessman at the end of the day. I have a small business, whatever. I'm looking for a solution who immediately fix my problem and generate revenue. Blockchain, whatever, doesn't matter. If blockchain solution come tomorrow and solve my problem, then maybe I will start to consider it.
Okay, so I got this. It's good to know how MSMEs are leading the way in going online and adopting simpler fintech solutions. So now focusing on the sector itself, since many businesses welcome fintech, as you said, to improve their operations, what's hindering the fintech industry itself to flourish further? Are there like regulation roadblocks where we'd like to address?
So maybe I can go first, and obviously
Okay,
there's my friends and panels have a first-hand experience of it. Right?
go
It
ahead.
is. I think it starts with whether you have got the right framework in place, whether the central banks and the Securities Commission is allowing that to happen, right? Once that is said, I think it's easier for enterprises and SMEs to start adopting it because there's a trust built in, right? I give you an example: simple industry like peer-to-peer lending. Now, if you think as a retail investor, I am investing. As an SME or a large enterprise, I'm going for a loan for working capital. Now, because I'm investing, it becomes an investment product, and hence somewhere Securities Exchange Commission should look after it. But because on the other side there's loan being taken, it becomes a bank product, right? Because lending is happening. So it actually took quite a while, not just for Philippines, but most of the countries around the world to figure out where do I put this peer-to-peer lending, right? Because it is challenging the coexistence, right? There was simpler product about investments and lending and never mixed together, right? So it takes a while for central banks and the authorities to come up with a new process, new policies to start regulating these industries, right? And that's where I think that the bulk of hindrances, once you have set up the policies and rules and regulations in place, then I think things really start to move forward and really start to happen much earlier, right? So I think that is the biggest hindrance once you get those things. And uh, fintechs per se are the new generation startups. Now they really don't care about regulation. They have, in most countries, they have actually come up with something that is not in regulations, that is against the regulations, and then central banks and regulatory authorities have tried to regularize and bring rules and regulations around it, right? So it's always central banks are to do a catch up, and simply things are changing just too fast. So I think regulatory bodies are the key to moving everything in a fast forward direction.
So if I go, Bea, my experience of the Philippine interaction with the central bank is a little different from what I just heard. No one, we care a lot about the rules. I know for a fact that even my colleague of PayMaya, whatever, we are very careful about that, and we are really playing uh, by the book and try to find the best way to operate. So that's number one. I know that in other countries the approach is different. There is more, I don't know what word used, but a rebel approach, and you have to deal with it if you are the regulator. That can create conflict sometimes. From my experience, that's not really what I'm seeing overall in the Philippines and from GCash, but even from the other player of the industry. And the second thing, which is maybe the reason why also of the first thing, the second thing is the BSP in Philippines is actually extremely helpful. The interaction that we have with them, and uh, you were right, actually in some other country, that's not necessarily the way things works. There's a kind of the old fort and the newcomer and some culture shock or whatever. But I wouldn't say that that's what we are experiencing in the Philippines, actually. Um, in all my interaction with BSP or even at the GCash overall level, each time we are discussing, we are interacting, we are raising something that should potentially be updated because it's not adapted to the way things are happening today. It's always a productive conversation, and the result actually are coming quite fast, considering that you are dealing with a central bank. There is also initiative sometimes coming literally from the central bank. You were talking earlier about InstaPay. So this hub between all the bank was clearly an initiative driven by the bank, but also by the central bank. So I guess maybe in the Filipino context, we have the chance to have a very active partner uh, who understand what's happening and who is aggressively supported it. So, and they send very concrete signal at the government level. Mitch was talking earlier about the Ayuda and the social amelioration program. On the GCash side, I know that we disbursed something like 16 billion peso to 2 million family. But the interesting part is not that. The interesting part is they actually choose consciously that GCash and also PayMaya, and I think there was another wallet, was actually be the leading player in that distribution. That's a very strong signal. They didn't choose bank, they didn't choose uh, pawn shop or whatever mechanism or remittance partner. No, they choose an e-wallet. knowing that you would go after the people who needed the most help from the government, who are not necessarily the most tech savvy. So that was a very, very strong signal. So overall, I think we are in a very good willing and healthy environment when it's about the player and the central bank or the government.
Yeah, definitely agree with Fred there that the BSP is quite progressive and very supportive as well. But I guess what's hindering is really more of the lack of government IDs on the consumer side. Even on the enterprises, small or large, right? There is no sort of nationwide governing body that can vet all of these enterprises as part of due diligence. So that's always a struggle and can slow down some of the processes as you onboard merchants, right, and legitimate merchants as well. So things like obviously, if you bring on board credit cards and debit cards, there are some rules that you need in place as part of the due diligence for merchants. And today, there is no governing government body that covers all of these MSMEs. So it's a little bit difficult in that sense. The other one, I guess, is digitizing cash, right? So digitizing cash can still be a pain point as people go to cash-in centers to actually top up their wallets, whether it's GCash or PayMaya. So there is still some friction there until such time that everyone receives their salaries or their money in digital format, then that friction will sort of disappear, right? As well, and the cost associated with it.
Okay.
I agree with Mitch when it comes to the IDs as one of the hindrances that we've always had, and we laud the government's effort to start rolling out with the national ID system. Although that rollout has not really picked up a lot of steam from what we have seen. So I believe there's still a lot of inefficiencies with the way it's being carried out, and we're hoping that that will eventually smoothen out soon. And I think it has always been cited as one of the reasons why we've had a low banking penetration, because a lot of people don't really have valid IDs.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Mr. Chang, Mr. Sonny, Mr. Levi, and Sir Mitch for giving us a glimpse on the regulatory environment on fintech in the country and how we can improve on it. So our next question revolves around on the heavy reliance of Filipinos on cash, which you've been mentioning a while ago. If businesses are just starting to explore fintech, um, are they having a hard time gaining clients or customers' trust? Since a huge portion of the population still prefers cash and other traditional ways when transferring money, and how can we overcome this?
Well, the first thing, Bea, I think the perception that a huge portion of the people prefer cash, I don't think it's fitting with the reality anymore. I mean, more and more, it's less and less true. As I was saying earlier, with 44 millions of guys who have a GCash account, and this is only the GCash account, there is probably less and less people now who are only living through cash. I was actually asking during our conversation the last data from the BSP. So guys, if you have fresher data, correct me. But according to BSP, 17% of payment volume and 25% of payment value were transacted digitally last year. So 1/4 basically of the overall volume of cash part of transaction is passing now through a digital road. So I'm not saying that cash is not is appear to disappear, like in the coming 6 months or whatever. No, it's still there, and it's not going to move radically in the coming month. But clearly, the trend is to digitalize this form of transaction, and it's getting more and more obvious for Filipino that they can trust this digital road when they transact.
Yeah, so I think most people don't really like cash, right? So if you think about it, cash in general, it's a hassle. It's dirty as well, and more often than not, if we go early in the morning, right, to one of our smaller merchants and you pay for something, let's say it's 74 pesos, the bill that you will have will be somewhere along the lines of 500 to 1,000 pesos, because that's what comes out from the ATMs. And they will not have change, right? Early in the morning. So there, you already see that there are inefficiencies. It's a hassle for everyone. Sometimes you end up paying more because of cash, because they don't have change. So you round up and giving that money that you could have kept, right? So in general, we see everyone moving digitally, and as Fred mentioned, that more and more enterprises are seeing that change. So in our side, what we've seen is there's a merchant that used to transact either in cash or via checks. In the past, it's a wholesale seller of frozen goods, so they interact with a lot of restaurants, caterers, hotels, and the like. Obviously, with the pandemic, the entire thing just shut down, and they had to move basically to a B2C type of business online. And lo and behold, they've actually done like 200 million of sales purely online, and this is accepting payments digitally, right? All types of payments, and that's how they pivoted their business. So I think for them, knowing that and seeing that and all of the efficiencies it brings, there's no going back to cash, right? Or very little part of their business will go back to cash. And you'll see that trend moving forward, not just in the Philippines, but we do have a crystal ball. You look outside, everywhere in the world, everyone is moving to digital types of payments.
For me, I think the case for cash, I would like to take a look at it from the consumer's point of view. Well, I totally agree with Mitch and Fred that platforms like PayMaya and GCash have really matured over the years, and it can be trusted. But for me, the case for cash is really, do you trust the seller? Because a lot of people do sell, the likes of Facebook and Instagram, and you don't really know these people. Once you send your money through e-wallets, there's really no simple way of taking it back if it turns out to be a scam. So I think there is still that lack of trust in the seller, that you would want to see the physical product actually delivered before you hand over your payment. So it's not so much a trust on the platform, but a trust on the seller.
Okay, sir. Okay. I agree that there's still lack of trust going around, but the rise in digital payments is indeed obvious since the pandemic. So before we go to our to the questions on Facebook, just want to ask, how would you rate the country's adoption of fintech compared to its neighboring peers? And is the Philippines a laggard in this area, or are we starting to slowly catch up? Maybe Mr. Sunny can elaborate on this further, as he talked about it earlier.
So, Bea, I was hoping that you don't call upon me and let my colleagues speak
Sorry.
on it, because I am obviously seeing a lot of things, right? So, if I just compare with the other 5 Southeast Asian countries, right, that being Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, I think the revolution itself has started slightly late in Philippines. They are, as I said, people actually boarded on the digital payment, and in fact, the e-commerce revolution also started much faster, much earlier than in these countries. Vietnam is a bit of catching to do up. So maybe Vietnam may not be maybe similar to what you are, but I think your regulations came in much later. That initiatives from BSP came in slightly more later, and that is to do with whether you were ready by infrastructure, right? And there's the infrastructure wasn't there, be it just looking at the broadband penetration, or just looking at whether you have a common digital ID, national digital ID. And somewhere these countries obviously had those digital IDs going for them. Their mobile wallet payment started much faster, and the penetration is much higher right now, as compared to what you guys are, right? So it's just the starting point, slightly later than most of your neighbors, but I am sure that you guys will catch up, right? And it is, I think right now the greatest equalizing factor is how far your smartphones have reached. And I see that your smartphone penetration is reached to 72% or so, which is a great deal, right? And everything will start to fall in place. So yes, slightly behind your peers, but I'm very positive that you guys will catch up much faster.
Okay, thank you all for sharing your 2 cents on this. Um, so we just like to ask one quick question from our Facebook viewers. Mm, okay, so this one. Okay, this one. From a consumer perspective, what's next for fintech? A lot of buying and selling is happening in various social media channels like GCash and PayMaya. Can they help? How can they help protect sellers and even buyers? Anyone from GCash or PayMaya would like to answer this? Maybe Sir Mitch
I
Padua
think
or
there is two different questions there, Bea. The number one is what's coming on the fintech, on the consumer aspect. And the number one is the security part. So on the security aspect, that's something we are aggressively working on. We keep on improving. We keep on developing new system, new optimization, a new guarantee for the consumer, new fraud tool, and that's something. It's a permanent rush to always come with new solution and keep on optimizing your solution. So I think it's the direction it's taking, and the fact that the figure are showing that there is a significant growth and adoption of the system show at some point that the Filipino consumer is getting more and more confidence by using that. So the trust is there, and it goes with security. So I think we are in the right direction, and we're going to keep on developing that part. Now, on the other part of your question, what's coming? Well, clearly, financial services is going to be a huge topic in the coming month and next year. Whether it's loan, installment mechanism, um, access to products like stock market or insurance, uh, any type of financial services product, wherever on the scope. That's a direction that's probably going to happen aggressively. E-commerce is clearly a direction also, proposing an ecosystem where people can develop their own e-commerce store and have access to the audience that the wallet are proposing, like we have now on GLife. That's probably another direction. As we were mentioning earlier, everything connected to MSME, and there is more and more people now who have to reinvent themselves, building a new form of livelihood. So you're going to see more and more small business solution, suits of offers, of tools that will be also happening, and more from, I would say, from a startup ecosystem. You're going to probably also see more and more fintech popping up, probably not necessarily wallet per se, but more specifically focused on one aspect of the fintech, whether it's financial services or whether it will be e-commerce plugin or whatever. Going to see more and more players proposing their services and try to embed themselves in these big platforms.
okay.
Yeah,
Got
so
it.
maybe to jump in on that as well, Bea.
Go ahead,
So
sir.
on your first question, I think you're asking more on like the security when you're doing sort of your payments with the sellers, right? So you need to separate also two types of sellers: the enterprise where there is legitimate due diligence, and I think Dick also touched upon that a while ago. And then there's also the casual or social seller where it is a person, right? So on the enterprise side, definitely there is very deep due diligence done. So when businesses come out and they accept all types of payments, you can be pretty much sure that you're dealing with a secure entity and a secure seller, right? On the peer-to-peer side, it's a little bit trickier, right? Where onboarding comes into play and we look into sort of the fraud transactions or the complaints that are happening. It's sort of like, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. If you're a new person and you're seeing that there's a lot of transactions and then you suddenly leave and you try to open an account, all of these things will come into play, and tools for these types of accounts or fraud tools for these types of accounts will get better and better as we go along. I think government can also help in that manner, wherein these types of people and scammers really get the bad side of the government, where there are heavy penalties for doing such things. Now, I guess on the future side, PayMaya itself has applied for a digital banking license. It's no secret now. So that's part of the things that you will find as part of the inclusive financial services that PayMaya will bring both to the enterprise and consumer. So you will have things like merchant bank accounts happening, working hand in hand with our working capital loans, for example, supply chain financing and all of that. And then as we bring on board our agent network on the ground, think of them as 40,000 PayMaya bank branches that you will find as well on the ground, right? So today, I think all of the bank branches and ATMs combined are around 12 to 16,000. Imagine having 40,000 and more as they grow branches nationwide, right? So, and the power of that. On the consumer side, definitely more on savings, wealth, and asset management, growing your income, right, for the future. So that's something definitely we're looking at, and then also providing a little bit of help in terms of consumer loans as well, to the normal person. So I think that's something to look forward to in the next few months, years, in for Paymaya at the very least.
Okay, thank you, Sir Mitch and Mr. Levi, for enlightening us on the importance of security features in fintech and how the players, consumers, and the government can improve in this. Since we don't have much time left, I'll be leaving one simple questions for all our speakers to answer, and this will also serve as your closing remarks. So the question is, do you think fintech will flourish in the Philippines, where cash remains king, and why or why not? Maybe, sir. Okay. Maybe Mr. Mitch Padua can go ahead, then followed by Mr. Levi, Mr. Sonny, and then Mr. Chang.
Okay, so I think again, thank you, Bea and Business World, for having us, and to Fred, Shlandra, and Dick for the conversation. So there is no going back to the way we are, and digital is happening now. As far as digital payment is concerned, the growth we are now riding is going to be exponential. We are going to be catching up with our peers in the region, and you will see that happen faster and faster as the months go by. Now, PayMaya is positioned to significantly drive this growth with the breadth and scale of our end-to-end digital financial services platforms for consumers and merchants. From our standpoint, we believe this growth will come from the following factors. First, massive digital adoption will happen sooner than expected. It's already happening now, right? We're seeing it. So similar to the internet adoption in the Philippines, Filipinos are going to leapfrog into digital payments, mobile first with e-wallets, digital banking accounts, and other fintech solutions. Second, merchant payments is the next trillion peso segment. In the first half of 2020, the share of digital and merchant payments volume alone was just 6%, right? Compared to consumer payments at 19% and government payments at 82%. So accelerating business to consumer, business to business, and business to government payments is where PayMaya commits to address. Over the short term, we're coming up with exciting innovations to make sure we can seamlessly enable businesses to send payments to other businesses and individuals by offering solutions that capture settlement all the way down to disbursement and to encashment. Third, everyone can become a digital entrepreneur, right? With the transformation of MSMEs on the ground. So we've begun the digital migration of our smart Padala agents to become a one-stop shop for digital financial services.
Facebook
So
Live.
beyond remittance, they can now serve as agents for digital payments, digital lifestyle, and digital banking services. And then finally, digital payments is going beyond just mere utility. So digital payments is the entry point to access more sophisticated forms of financial services. After our successful rollout of our e-wallet, merchant acquiring, and domestic remittance business, we are beginning the next phase of PayMaya, our fintech journey into digital banking. With this, we are positioned to further complete the payments ecosystem and enrich the lives of both our consumers and our enterprises by providing convenient, fully digital, seamless products such as deposit, lending, insurance, and investments. So that's it for me, Bea.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Mitch. Maybe Mr. Sunny can. Oh, Miss. Okay, Mr. Levi, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
answering to your question, actually, we already share a lot of insights, I think, on that one. So, is it possible the fintech to flourish in the Philippines? It's already happening, actually, and the figures are there. Again, as I was mentioning, leading the market with more than 44 million wallet, more than 1 trillion peso in GTV last year, and higher than 2 trillion coming this year. The figures are there. So cash is king. Cash is still strong. Not sure that cash is still king. Doesn't mean, again, that cash will disappear. Certainly not. But more and more Filipino now are getting used to digitalize their transaction in any form. And not only digitalize their transaction, but also moving on and have access to some deeper financial journey. As I was mentioning earlier, 1 by 3 of our users have actually now the joy of using a financial services product. So the idea, I think, what we learned from the pandemic during this past month is actually that a lot of Filipino was totally excluded from the financial journey. And it shows how it was important for them to have access, but for us as companies to propose and provide them some solution. That's what fintech can do. Fintech can make it affordable, easier to access, easier to understand, and easier to take advantage of these services that were in the past, at least in the head of the Filipino, limited to a certain group of wealthy people. So I guess fintech is going now more than just a financial aspect. It's more bringing Filipino in digitalization of their journey and a full, how can I say that? A full digital ecosystem, meaning payment, yes, but also saving money, taking advantage of everything that the system can propose you, a lifestyle journey, and more and more. And who knows, the national ID could be at some point embedded also in this system when you see the audience that this platform and particularly GCash is reaching now. So I think at the end of the day, going back to our vision, we're looking forward to continuing on our path of finance for all with more and more relevant product and service that will continue to make Filipinos' everyday lives better.
Go ahead, Sir Sunny, for your closing statement.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear Fred's remark, and I certainly agree to a lot of things. Right, I think fintechs have evolved in most of the countries, and I certainly see same happening for Philippines. It is going to grow. There's going to be more and more services launched, particularly putting consumer at center and putting enterprises at center, and there would be services being launched to make them make them payments, pay better, save them money, invest money, and insure themselves, right? These are going to be the 4 biggest pillars around which the revolution will start to happen. Having said that, post-pandemic, some part of cash will start to come back, right? And that is primarily to do with the trust. Traditionally, people have thought things that I can feel, touch, is what I believe in. So things I see, I believe in, right? And that's not going to go away, significantly. That is going to be there. But as people start to enjoy their, digital payments and savings and everything else, they will realize that it is bringing them lots and lots of benefit, and that's when the migration towards more fintech related solution will start to happen. Parallelly, I believe there's going to be infrastructure on the internet that will become much better. There will be policies and rules and regulations in place. What if I'm online? What happens to my digital money, right? And that will come into play as well, which will further accelerate the overall adoption of fintech, adoption of digital finance. So it's a big thing. It's happening, and there's no U-turn on it. It's going to grow further into 2021, 22, 23.
Thank you, sir. And for our last speaker, Mr. Chang, go ahead.
Yeah, so as I shared at the start of this conference, the numbers have really been showing that it has been increasing and it's been growing rapidly. And echoing Fred and Mitch's observation, there's really no more turning back at this point in time. Yes, Shalandra mentioned that, yes, some cash will eventually trickle back when things go back to normal. But definitely it won't be the same as it was before the pandemic. And Dragon Pay's philosophy has always been to be channel agnostic and to accept all sorts of payments. So we will continue to work with the likes of GCash, PayMaya, and all the other e-wallets and all the other payment options to make sure that no Filipino is left behind. No matter what payment option you prefer to use, you should be able to use that in our ecosystem and be able to make payments to our merchants. So I guess I would like to just sort of end this by encouraging all businesses of all sizes to adapt to the new normal. There is definitely a very big opportunity to grow, and it's more especially for the small and micro ones, given now that they are in equal footing with the big companies. And I think one myth that we have to erase from our minds is it is really not as expensive or as complicated as one might think. So I was mentioning earlier the analogy of people doing live selling in Facebook. They can easily accept all sorts of payments from GCash, PayMaya, and the other options in so many ways without really having to do complicated API integration kind of thing. So it's really the best time right now for business to look into going online. And again, thank you to Business World and to my co-panelists for the engagement conversation.
Thank you, sir. And many thanks to our speakers, Mr. Chang, Mr. Sonny, Mr. Levi, and Mr. Padua, for taking the time to share your insights with us today. That concludes today's session. It has been a pleasure being with all of you this morning, and I hope you enjoyed the second part of Business World's Insights, Fintech for a Financially Inclusive and Resilient Economy series. We'd like to extend our gratitude to Tata Consultancy Services and GCash for making this series possible, as well as Globe, InLife, and PayMaya for supporting this session. A big thanks to our partner organizations as well: British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Bank Marketing Association of the Philippines, Management Association of the Philippines, Philippine Association of National Advertisers, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and to our media partner, the Philippine Star. And of course, thank you to everyone who joined us today via Facebook Live. Be sure to tune in to Business World's social media pages to stay updated on our next projects. Again, this is Bea Laforga, and this has been Business World's Insights. Have a nice week ahead. Thank you. Bye.
Sa pagpatak ng ulan, sa pagsubok na dumaraan, may tapang kang harap, lilipad kang may pangarap. Lilipad kang may pangarap.
Kailan ay di mag-iisa, susulong ka ng may kasama, may tapang kang haharap.
Lilipad kang may pangarap. Lilipad kang may pangarap. Simula na ng bukas, ngayon na, ngayon na. Simula na ng bukas, ngayon na, ngayon na. Simula na ng bukas, ngayon na, ngayon na, ngayon na.
Sabay sa pagbabago,
Harapin ang bagong mundo. Simula na ng bukas. Simula na ng bukas ngayon.
What if one day you wake up and you have a child? What if your child grows up to be curious? What if he gets adventurous? What if he's a risk taker? What if you are no longer around? Make sure you keep your family protected with Basic Cover Plus. Get up to 2 times your insurance benefits, your premium back, and more. All guaranteed.
Your customers have bills to pay, essentials to buy, and services to hire. Make it secure, reliable, and hassle-free for them with PayMaya. PayMaya's payment solutions have you covered because now you can accept all kinds of cashless payments any way you do business, whether it's in-store, delivery, via mobile app, on your website, or even without a website. Plus, you can monitor your business growth on a single dashboard. You're busy growing your business and serving your customers. Get empowered with payment solutions from PayMaya.